I don't know. My life's in a bit of a tumult, but just getting ready for the tour and everything, and building out what this live show is going to be. It's been a lot. It's a daunting, expensive experience. I don't know if you heard, but inflation is a thing.
I'm not familiar with inflation. I have heard of Biden inflation. Is that related?
Biden. Oh, I call it brand inflation, but it's not real. No, I don't know what is real. I'm sort of checked out from the world of politics. I think in 2018, I had a little moment in 2020 where I started to care about electoral politics and thought that things could change. And when it didn't, I sort of became permanently jaded and cynical. So I don't believe in anything. I'm in my doom-pilled stage.
You're black-pilled?
Black pill. Well, black-pilled, I feel like that has connotations of...
Is that a little too incel-y?
It's a little too incel, a little too hate filled. I'm not filled with contempt or hate. I love my fellow man. It's not the man, my man I hate. It's the man. So, I don't believe we're in good shape. Hence the new record, I guess, is the point of all of this.
My understanding is you were a Bernie supporter like myself.
No, I was Trump. I was a Trump guy.
Oh, so you were more disillusioned by the 2020 election?
Yes. Georgia. No, I'm kidding. Yes, I was a Bernie bro. So yeah, I felt a little crestfallen.
I was talking to somebody about this recently, about how it really did feel like there was a generational window there for a minute. But also, in hindsight, of course that's how things worked out.
Of course. And who knows how things would have, if they ever could have, which they never would have, how they could have turned out differently. But that's for another timeline, I guess.
You're just tuned out of international, national news?
Yeah, unless it's like, it affects me directly. I can't. I don't have the constitution for it.
I've walked that line to a certain extent. I need to be tuned in just for my job. I'm finding it increasingly impossible not to just get completely caught up in things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, that's the nature of it. I mean, it's designed to feed your anxieties and fears and ultimately your sense of hopelessness too. I don't know. It just feels like a nasty cycle. But I have no prescription. I don't know and I don't think digging a hole and burying your head in the sand is the answer either. But I'm not about to offer up solutions to change the world with my music. I don't know what, if we really peel that onion, I don't know what the fuck I'm actually doing or what the point of it all is, other than it brings me some pleasure, self-motivated pleasure, I guess, to write songs. Really, that's the beginning and the end of it. It's the coming up with the song, it's hitting on the melody, it's writing the song, it's recording the song. Those are the joys. Everything else is external from that and has really nothing to do with anything I derive pleasure from.
Yeah, but I mean, having that thing still puts you ahead of, I don't want to say most people, but certainly a lot of people. Not everybody has that thing that they can tap into.
Oh, I have sincere gratitude that I have that outlet, that like pressure valve. And that's where I can kind of put these kind of bleak, doom-pilled ideas, I guess, about the world, the state of the world. I can put them on record as a kind of catharsis, I suppose.
There's also just the very, pragmatic fact of this is what you do for a living, and you live in...
Well, that's a bit of a stretch. Living it's a bit of an exaggeration.
It's a substantial part of your income. Is that fair to say?
I don't know. I'm this record. I'm like self-releasing it, and so I'm kind of on the hook for getting everything together. I'm self-managed. I'm a very small little cottage, and so I don't know about much. I've yet to see any income, a lot of outcome, but. So outgo, I guess, but we'll see if we can get one of these kids to do an idiotic dance on TikTok to one of the songs. Maybe I can get back on my feet.
How did you come to self-release it?
The fact that no one responded to my emails, any label connections I've made over the past 20 years, that I reached out to and said, "Hey, I've got an amazing record that I'd love for you to hear." Yeah, that was kind of the motivating factor, I guess. I want to release records. I want to make music, and it is a selfish pursuit, really. Like it benefits me to make the music, but also then for it to exist in the world. Otherwise, you're just living in this kind of imaginary fantasy world where you just have, I don't know, like a kind of tree falling in a forest that doesn't make any sound. So it soothes my soul that it exists outside of me and could kind of exist, hopefully, beyond me. But so I don't know. Maybe that's why I do it. But yeah, so I'm just doing it myself. It's kind of. And I believe in the music. I think it's worth it.
I guess it's 20 years now since the Unicorns record came out. So as a fan of 20 years, it's somewhat surprising for me to hear. Not surprising from the standpoint of, obviously, the music industry is super fucked right now, and it's hard for just about anyone, but maybe 5 people. But what's your sense of what happened between Islamania and now?
The world got a little smaller, a little more constricted, I think. But also that record, as much as I love that record, it didn't, records go gold and platinum. And I think Islamania went triple wood. I think that's as high of a certification as it got. I don't know why I'm being so bleak and vulnerable with you, Brian. I don't know. Maybe there's something about the tone of your voice. You bring it out.
Vulnerability's fine. We'll get somewhere positive. I'm not super worried about it. I mean, invariably, given the nature of the new record, I think we were gonna head in this direction at some point. So it's good to get the existential dread out of the way up top, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then we can dig a little deeper into just general malaise, maybe some ennui while we're at it.
We can work our way up to boredom, I think. Let's shoot for boredom for the conversation.
As long as it's spiritual boredom.
It's interesting, the sort of the contrast between the two records. I certainly, I went through some real rough times during this pandemic, as a lot of people did. I, had some health struggles, and I'm living in New York City and in Queens, which was the capital of COVID in March, April 2020. So I'm very much sympathetic or empathetic to just wallowing in despair, and maybe at very least, this is a productive way to get in touch with that, to make art from it.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had a hard couple of years, or you've had some hardships. I hope you're doing. But yeah, I think having that outlet is good. But I think, and letting it out rather than kind of bottling it up, I think is a healthy behavior. And the record is definitely a response to Islamania. It's definitely kind of the come down where the those drugs kind of wearing off and reality starts to creep in. But I also offer some hope, I think, on the record, especially in the last song. The last song was actually supposed to be the first song of the next record. But I thought it would be interesting to almost like a button or a post-credit scene or something, have it kind of tease where things could go, a way out from the basement, from the darkness. And so that was the idea, was not to end things on a dour note, really, a sour, dour note, but to provide some glimmer of hope, I guess. And I think that's what we need. I think human beings are resilient, and we find ways in the face of real hardships and real struggle to pull it together. I have to have that, a little bit of hope in there somewhere. And I think there's a world where we kind of organize and get together. I think that's what Bernie was kind of hinting at too. So I leave a little shred of hope.
Is the glimmer of hope on the final track, is it that sort of, that sense of collectivism?
Well, not quite. I mean, there is a sense of that, I suppose, but it's a personal moment, I think. That character in that song is having a personal awakening, I think. And I think it involves being connected to the world and being not isolated in a kind of dungeon. I think it involves being in the mix, but in that moment of enlightenment, I think it's a solo experience in that brief moment. But then I think what follows is joining of society.
It's interesting to view it as a response, and it's interesting to have collectivism be a silver lining to it, because we very much plumbed the depths of isolation over the last 3 years. I mean, for me personally, I don't know if you had the same experience, but the pandemic was far and away the most isolating time of my life.
It was a weird one. Again,
as somebody who ostensibly does this for a living, how did you make it through?
Well, it hit at a weird time for me, because I had taken, after 2016, I had taken this break from music, from touring and making records. I'd felt like the well was dry a little bit, and I felt like I was just hanging around too much. And I think when you hang around at a party too long, people just sort of take for granted that you're still there. And so I felt this quiet need to dip out the back door a little bit. It was only around 2020 when I was making these moves to kind of come back and started working on a record, which became Islamania. And then, of course, everything changed in the world, and that was put on pause. So I had it wasn't like I had obligations that changed. And, I think I was very lucky that a big part of my income is doing like theme songs for podcasts, you know, and then gratefully having the kind of like mailbox money of songwriting residuals and things like that. And, you know, hoping that you get a license here or there, a song gets used here or there, and then you get the windfall from that. Those have been the things that have kept me, sustained, I guess. But so my life didn't really change in that I was always kind of working on my own clock in my own way, usually at home. But the world definitely shrank and I felt it, but I don't think I was hit as hard as other people. I mean, I'm a social creature, and so I like being out in the world. That was hard. But as far as my day-to-day structure, it gave me room to try other things. There was there was a world in which it kind of opened up certain doors for me.
Again, the last time that you and I spoke, it was for a comic that you had come out on Fantagraphics. I mean, it's not as if you weren't trying other avenues prior to all of this.
Right. Well, that was in the period in 2018 when we spoke. That was in the time when I had quit music. I mean, I don't think I was advertising it, and I wasn't going around saying Islands is done, because it was kind of a silly idea that Islands could break up. Like it's an extension of me, really. So that's not quite possible. But I felt like I wanted to close the book on it a little bit. And there was a nice round number of 10 years of making records. There was 7 records. It felt like a good body of work. And so I was trying to do other things. And one of the things that I'd always loved was drawing and specifically comic books of the underground or, independent variety, I guess. So linking up with Fantagraphics was truly a dream come true. I was a huge fan of the company in high school and the work of a lot of the cartoonists or artists that worked, published with Fantagraphics. So it was a huge thing. And I think having that break from Islands was what I needed to be able to put that focus on that book. And there's other things I tried to do too that didn't quite pan out. But there were other avenues of expression I was trying to try as well.
You're referring to it as a break in hindsight, but it sounds like it was potentially going to be a lot more than that.
I wrote a letter. I never sent it. My manager at the time was like, don't post this. But I was going to write a note that was just, I'm done. I'm done with music. I'm done singing songs. There's a cynical way that plays out where the guy, the lead singer of the band, announces his retirement, and then the show suddenly his last shows booked or become these finale shows, and the venue suddenly jumps up in capacity 5 sizes, and then that's it. It's this big celebration of this artist's life, like almost like a living wake or something. And then, inevitably, I can't outrun this thing. I love to do it. And 5 years later, I'm back, and it does feel like this cynical, like exploiting people's, the thing that I think people should tap into, which is no one's going to be here forever. And so we should appreciate what we have when we have it. But I felt like I'm a quiet person when it comes to that stuff. I like to keep certain things to myself. And so I did decide it was better I don't need to announce this. If I'm going to take a break, I don't need to announce it. If someone asks, I'll tell them, but I don't need it to be a look at me kind of attention seeking.
I mean, this was a while ago now, but insofar as you're able to remember, what what did the letter say exactly?
I was probably just feeling sorry for myself in the letter, and was in the Notes app note. I think it was a recognition of what had happened, what I felt like I'd accomplished, and it was expressing some appreciation for the people that had stuck around, the people that cared. But ultimately, I think it was a pointless exercise. And maybe all I needed to do was just write it and say it. Boo-hoo, woe is me. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about me. Not enough people care about me. Not enough people are listening to me or coming to my shows, so why bother? You don't deserve me, that kind of thing tied into I'm kind of creatively tapped out, spent, out of gas or whatever. So it was something silly like that just didn't need to be made public. It was just a feeling, and I was able to feel it, articulate it, and then just move on, which I'm grateful that I didn't announce anything like that.
I think that's a pretty universal impulse, and I think we've all been guilty of doing some form of that on social media of, it's not only you expressing where you are, but whether consciously or subconsciously, it's you effectively putting out into the universe and trying to get some positive feedback, and trying to get people to maybe trying to tap into what it was that made you fall in love with music in the first place.
You're right. You're on the money with the social media comparison, because there is this similar impulse where it's like, hey, pay attention to me, like validate me, like me, heart my post, like share me. You know what I mean? Like there's this kind of, it is maybe a human, one of our weaker kind of vulnerabilities where we feel the need to, or we feel this desire to be appreciated and loved. And I think social media has kind of drawn that out of us in a really kind of distasteful, ugly kind of way. And I think I was falling into that a little bit, where I was like, hey, I need a little bit of confirmation that I matter, that I exist, And the truth is, if you want to zoom out far enough, nothing matters. Nothing I do matters. Nothing I'm ever going to make matters. I'm just a bunch of bones that's about to go turn into some worm food.
I agree with you that, not that you're worm food. I agree with you that there are certain aspects of. I agree with you. I might in a roundabout way, but I agree with you that there are certain aspects of social media. Like obviously, there are aspects of social media that are very much playing into the, endorphin center of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that the need to be validated is necessarily a bad impulse, and certainly it's not a product of social media. And it's important. I mean, you read these interviews with legendary artists who, act like they don't give a shit about, and maybe there are people like that in the world that don't really care about whether or not people care about the thing that they're putting into the world. But at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is that a big part of the reason why not why you make things, but why you share things is because, you want that feedback from people and you want that connection with people.
You want to be loved, too. I mean, another word for validation, I think, is love. And you just want to feel, maybe it stems from some childhood moment where you didn't get enough of it or something. And I think those artists that say that they're not seeking it, their cup is probably filled. So they don't need it because they don't think that they're seeking it out because they're already so fulfilled. And, I think we all I think it is a pretty baseline, ancient kind of human need, is that need to feel loved and part of the tribe, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. So I don't mean to completely write it off. But I'd like to be a little more. I think anyone who's making stuff, it's a fanciful idea, but I think it's nice to feel like this autonomous thing that makes and creates, and it doesn't matter what people think, but we are part, you're in the world, you exist in the world. I want to be, it's easy to say that I don't care and that I can do it without any kind of validation or confirmation that I'm on the right track, but yeah, it's good to feel like we're in flow with the world and that we're in step with the world.
You're obviously a well-established artist, and that you've been doing this a long time and that you have this fan base. I assume that there's a group of people, and I certainly would include myself in this, who will listen to every Islands album and, who will go see you tour. So is there a sense in which that validation or that love is kind of a moving target? It
felt like there were diminishing returns, really. And obviously that was me, I was in a way taking for granted the people that were listening and were caring. And those people mattered. Like, it does matter. That does keep me kind of feeling connected to the world, that there are people that are paying attention and are listening closely. It does feel good, even if it is just a feeling. But I think I was feeling like the better I get at this whole thing, the better I seem to feel like I get at the ability to write a song, to convey a feeling, or to express a feeling, or to tell a story, or to, write the best song I can. I feel like I've gotten better at it, and it feels like it's at odds with the amount of care that I receive. And that's just not something I can control. And so it's crazy making to try to, and I obviously am in my own fantasy world where I might think that I've made something that's very accessible and very universal. Not that I necessarily want that either, but that I'm making the best thing ever. And it's just not always going to translate that way. I'm in my own head and not necessarily connected to the temperature in what's going on. And so it's an unfair, I'm putting myself in an unfair position, I think, to expect a certain reaction. So I think I'm at peace with that now too. I think I'm remembering that this is something that I love to do, and I do feel grateful that I have the opportunity to do it in whatever capacity. And that's kind of where I'm gonna like live mentally, because it's kind of the only thing that's going to keep me from losing my mind, I think.
Restlessness or dissatisfaction is also not necessarily a bad impulse. Too much of it clearly is, but with the right balance of it, it's something that can be motivating. It's feeling like you didn't make the perfect record perhaps will drive you to this, hopeful place where you can create something a little more perfect next time.
I think that's a motivation. Yeah, I look back, I could honestly probably fill a single record of all the 9 records I've released. I could probably put all the songs I like or feel like confident about on one single record. And I think that does keep me going, knowing that, like, okay, I can do this better. I mean, I listened to that first Islands record and it sounds like shit. I mean, I think there's really great, I'm not trying to diminish what it was. It was I feel very proud of it, but there's things I would do differently, and maybe people would hear that and say, well, yeah, you've lost the plot. Like you'd wreck it if you tried to make it now. But
yeah, George Lucas.
Right, exactly. But I think I'm learning. Like I'm someone who came into this just learning by doing, and I didn't know what I was doing necessarily. And I think that naivete can be really beautiful, and you can land on really amazing stuff in a naive kind of way. But I also love I hate to say the craft of it. That sounds so schlocky and stupid, but the puzzle of it all. I think there's something emotional and indefinable about it. And that's how I approach music too. It's a very mystical process for me. I don't have technical training, and I'm a completely self-taught musician, and so it still feels almost supernatural when a song clicks, or even when one note follows the other, or that makes sense, or a harmony. Like there's nothing mathematical about it for me. It's just a very I get surprised when I stumble upon a song or a melody that moves me, and I love that, and I try to maintain that, but I also want it to get better. I want to get better at it, because I listen back and I think, okay, here's how I see what I'm doing here that's a little off, a little safe, or a little inaccurate or something. I didn't quite get to it. So it's not necessarily a technical thing. It's just like, how can I move you? How can I get to the point?
You mentioned the For Silence record, but again, this year being a milestone, for me, a very depressing milestone of it now being 20 years since the Unicorns record came out. What's your relationship to that set of songs?
I mean, God, 20 years is it's gone so long that it's a different lifetime. I feel like I can kind of remember that person that I was. That exuberant kind of, there was like a hubris there too. Like we really thought we could just take over the world. It was playful though. There wasn't a meanness to it, you know. There was maybe an impishness to it, but it wasn't mean what we were doing. But we felt like we could do anything, and we felt like we had a right to be there or something. I don't know. Like we didn't care about these kind of the greats that came before us. You know, we weren't intimidated. You know, we felt like we belonged too, and it was a beautiful thing to feel that way. And I think it's funny as you get older and you get a little wiser, you start to be humbled. I am so glad that I was able to. That was my introduction into the world of making music. That I got to feel that, and so I'm grateful that record exists. It feels like another person in a way, and in a kind of beautiful way. You know, I think that's. I'm glad that I've grown and changed, and I'm glad that there's a document of the person that I was, or that we were when we made that record.
Was it ultimately that hubris that you're describing? I mean, 4 years is not a long time to go from feeling like you're going to take over the world to not being a band anymore.
Well, yeah, and I mean, really, it was that 1 year of when we made that record, and then we toured it relentlessly in 2004. Yeah, there was just we were optimistic, you know, and I felt like my bandmate Alden, who was my, you know, friend in high school, I felt really confident in his abilities and his voice, his musical perspective. And so I felt like I could bring something that was maybe a little less polished, but a little more, we cared just enough to make it work, but we didn't care about stepping on in the wrong way or doing the wrong thing or expressing things the wrong way. So there was a freedom there, and I think
it seems like there wasn't a lot of despair at the time as far as moving on to the next project. I mean, the thing, I'm sorry, I should say, like, I don't want to sound like I'm discounting the success of that record, because for a first record, it was really successful and it did really put you on the map. But, in spite of things, I'm not entirely sure what happened, but in spite of things imploding or exploding or whatever happened, that you were able to move on to the next thing pretty quickly.
I felt like I had no choice, and I was destroyed when that band ended. To me, that was just the beginning. I had so much hope with the Unicorns, and had this very big idea of where it could go, and to me, it was only going. That was just the beginning of where it could have gone. That could have been misguided and wrong, but it felt like we were just getting started. And I knew that we had so much more to give. And then when the band ended, when Alden decided he didn't want to do it anymore, I was 23, I think, and felt like the world was over. I felt I'm too old now to start over. It's too late. I was having a complete...
Isn't that wild at, being almost like twice that age now, to look back at that and realize how ridiculous that sentiment was?
Yeah, I had no perspective, but I really thought I was finished. I thought it was too late for me to start over. Like, this was a band that kind of started in high school, and, or at least the beginning, the seeds of it, and it just felt like there's no way I can start all over. So I was forced to just kind of keep going, though. I had momentum. I knew that. I knew I had some momentum. And Jamie, who was drumming with the Unicorns, we decided we were going to keep working. And I had these songs that were, songs like Rough Gem and Where There's a Will, There's a Whalebone, were songs from the first Islands album that we played at Unicorn shows. Like, they were a Unicorn songs, effectively. Don't Call Me Whitney Bobby. Those were all Unicorn songs. They were intended for the next record. And so there was already this runway, and I knew I had to take advantage of it. And so I just kept that ball going. But I was feeling very, I was feeling very despondent and afraid.
Well, is the fairly nebulous nature of Islands, is that a response to what happened with Unicorns?
Yeah, and I don't mean to discredit the players in the band, Adam and Jordy and Evan, who bring the songs to a completely other level, and in some case we've written the songs together. But yeah, I think maybe I was safeguarding myself against that ever happening again, against being abandoned or left, just being left where holding the bag, I guess. And so, they say there's two kinds of bands, and it's a little dated, the genderized form of it, but there's the brother band, and then there's the band where you put the people together, and they're kind of, you become friends after, but then there's like the bands where the music comes out of the friendship. And those are really like very deeply personal relationships, those bands. And I think those bands have a harder time succeeding because there's so much history and emotion woven into the music. And I think that the Unicorns was a brother band. And when it imploded, I think I felt like I had to be a little more organized about how the band would be, what that band was, what a band is, I guess. And I've been so lucky since 2009 having Evan and Jordy, and then since 2013 having Adam. I feel like the band isn't the same without them, but ultimately it's a name, it's a name more than it is like for lads from Liverpool or whatever,
That's a wild thing about time. And I've noticed this, especially applies to music. And I think it's a product of the fact that, for the most part, certainly rock music is it's a young person's game, obviously. And we tend to define careers and aspects of bands and music by that first decade. But, it's wild, the fact, as you're saying this, the fact that I sort of still consider Islands to be or have been a nebulous thing, but it sounds like it's been a completely steady lineup for a decade now.
Yeah, it has.
What do you attribute that to?
I mean, I think I was very lucky. I think I attribute it to, I don't know. I think it's a lot of it is luck. I think having a really great group of people that connect deeply on a musical level, has been so crucial. And I think everyone recognizes that it's special, that when the four of us, I should say, that when we're together, that there's something really beautiful. I have another record that, we recorded this summer, just very recently. And we all got together. I had this pile of songs. We got together without any rehearsal, and we sat in the studio up in Canada. We recorded on Vancouver Island. And we sat facing each other in a circle, and we just played the songs. I showed the song on the guitar, and then with lightning speed, we as the four of us who've been playing together for all this time, were able to find it so quickly. And in 2 weeks, we recorded, 15 songs or something like that. So we moved very quickly, and I needed to do that after this record, this very like tinkering kind of Dolphins, which is this very laborious sort of incremental thing, and very atomized, fractured. I was doing most of the music and then bringing on the guys when I could to add certain things, but the song was already pretty buttoned up. So I wanted to honor the how important Evan, Jordy, and Adam are to the band by getting in a room with them and bringing it out together live. And that included like putting a microphone in the room too, and having the bleed of it all, just singing and all of it. It's like that we're committing to this take. This is the take. This is the vocal. And there was something so freeing about that. And because we'd worked together for 10 years, because we have that camaraderie, we were able to do it really well and really quickly. So I feel very blessed to be making music with these three guys.
If one of the overlying themes or defining characteristics of Dolphins is that, again, that despair that we kicked off with, although buttoned up by a hopeful song, I guess is the word I would use. What does the next group of songs look like?
Well, they're pretty wild. It's a new direction, if that's possible with a 10th album. There's definitely less of a sense of dread. It's almost like after the dust settles. Like, if this is the bomb going off, if Dolphins is kind of the final atomic bomb that goes off, it's kind of what's left after you sorting through the rubble and you're sort of reflecting on the world. And there's something wistful and nostalgic about it, and then there's something kind of beautiful about it. Rebuilding and finding where to go next and how to make it work.
This isn't the promotional cycle and it's a ways off, but that was kind of an abstract answer. Is there something more concrete you can give me?
I don't know if there's an overarching, one through line to the record, but there's stories, more so than any other song I've done. I'm tapping into the storytelling part of songwriting. When COVID happened, one of the things I tried to do, which I'd always wanted to do, was just write like prose fiction. And so I wrote like a book's worth of short stories, just getting them out. And part of that, so much of that writing was in editing the stories and refining them. And I think I tried to bring that over into the songwriting on this next record, which is, each song is telling a story. There is, more explicitly than I think ever before in my music, a narrator and a worldview that doesn't necessarily reflect my own. It's much less diaristic, I guess. So, and it's funny. It's definitely more funny and a little more, dare I say, horny. There's songs about the weirdness of two humans copulating, in the face of death and destruction.
I didn't put it together until right now. Like I understand the meaning behind the title, and it's a very funny one. But now that you're describing the next record in that way, I'm making a Douglas Adams connection to the Dolphins.
Yeah, someone else. I sometimes get. Sometimes that reference comes up, and I know I played the game. There was a video game, like a text-based video game in like the 80s for the Hitchhiker's Guide. That's my only connection to that, and to Douglas Adams. So I don't understand. Is there's some kind of...
I'll give you the quick, because I might edit this out. It's not super interesting if you don't know what I'm talking about. But the quick and dirty of it is that there is he did a book called So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and it's about how dolphins are like a more evolved life form, and they leave the humans behind. I think it was the last Hitchhiker's book. But the reason why I bring it up is because I assume you read Vonnegut growing up, like the rest of us, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I love Vonnegut.
So Douglas Adams is similar to Vonnegut in that a lot of his perspective comes from an examination of seemingly banal things and looking at these things that we take for granted as an alien life form almost. And that sounds the vein that you're kind of mining in for the next record.
And and even Dolphins too. I mean, and All You Can Do Is Laugh, the second song, it opens up with a line about this kind of nebulous, ominous thing appearing in the sky, like something has landed and we're now being faced with some sort of, metaphorical alien invasion. So yeah, there's a through line. There's a thread that's going to connect this one to the next one.
Feel the pain of it coming on. And just like that, it turns the young lovers on.